They tried to publicly guilt me into backing out of my dream job offer, so I announced it during my dad's retirement party. "Hi, I'm Caleb, 28, and last Sunday, I stood up at my dad's retirement party and told 50 of his closest friends and our entire extended family that I was moving 2,000 miles away in 2 weeks for my dream job." The room went dead silent. Except for Grandma. She clapped once, loudly. "Let me back up a second. See, when I say dream job, I don't mean some cushy gig with beanbags and kombucha on tap. I mean the job I'd wanted since I was 12. Assistant archivist at the National Museum of American History. The job that made my eyes light up when I was dragging my 8th grade class through exhibits about mail routes and 19th century postal uniforms. The job I never thought I'd land. But I did. The offer came in a month ago. Salary, benefits, housing stipend in DC, the works. I floated for a week. My partner, Dana, cried when I told them. My college mentor sent me 3 exclamation marks and a gif of Lincoln doing a dance. It was a win. A huge one. But then I told my parents. "Oh, Caleb." My mom said, "That's wonderful, but do you really want to be that far from home?" Translation: Don't go. Dad just looked at me and said, "Wouldn't it be smarter to wait until after the retirement celebration?" As if my future could be paused for the party where he finally stopped being principal. Tom Whitman, after 38 years of running the local high school like a ship with no sails, but a hell of a loud horn. At first, I tried to reason. I promised I'd still visit. I said I'd Zoom in every week. I said this job was a career maker, but they weren't listening. Instead, they started a slow and surprisingly coordinated campaign to guilt me into declining. It started subtle. "You know Grandma's health isn't great. The dog doesn't even know what a plane is. You're going to miss Cousin Eli's wedding." Then it got petty. My dad removed me from the group text planning his party. My mom told Dana that maybe I'd regret not being here if something happened to them. "I swear to you," she said it just like that. Something happened. Like I was boarding a rocket to Mars, not accepting a position in a city with Amtrak. Dana kept telling me, "It's your life, Caleb." But my chest was a war zone. I started second-guessing everything. I even opened the job offer email 5 times just to check that it was still real. Then came the final straw. My sister Ivy, who lives 12 minutes away and hasn't left our hometown since graduating cosmetology school, pulled me aside and said, "Maybe it's selfish to leave now, while we're all going through this big transition." I almost laughed. Their transition? I'm the one who's been stuck in career limbo for 3 years. But somehow, me moving forward was an inconvenience to their comfort. So I made a decision. I didn't make a scene. I didn't argue. I just waited. And when the party came, big catered affair in the backyard, string lights, live acoustic band, speeches about legacy and leadership, I waited until the toast was over. Then I stood up, tapped my glass, and said calmly, "Actually, I have an announcement too. You ever hear 50 people stop chewing at the same time? It sounds like church." The air just halts. I glanced at my dad. He was still holding his champagne mid-toast freeze frame. My mom had the smile of someone seconds away from screaming in lowercase. Ivy narrowed her eyes, like I just set fire to the gazebo. But Grandma? She tilted her head like a bird and raised her eyebrows. "Go on, boy," she didn't say, but definitely thought. So I did. I've accepted a position at the National Museum of American History. I'll be moving to DC in 2 weeks. Dead silence. Even the band stopped tuning. "It's been a long process," I continued, my hand suddenly very interested in the stem of my glass, "but it's a dream job. And I wanted to share the news with everyone I love." I waited. Nothing. You could hear the wind pass through Aunt Lydia's weird collection of wind chimes hanging off the deck. Then, from the far end of the yard, a single clap. Smack. Grandma. One crisp clap, followed by another, and then, "I always knew he was too smart for this town," she said, loud as daylight. Cue the slowest, most awkward chain reaction applause of my life. Dana stood up and joined in, like we'd rehearsed it. My Uncle Rick gave me one of those chin-jut, bro-nod things men do when they don't know how to express pride. Even the bandleader gave me a thumbs up, but not my dad. He sat back down, smoothed his tie, and took a long drink of his champagne. The rest of the night blurred. People came up with cautious congratulations, like I'd announced a divorce. Wow, that's big, someone said. So soon? Said another. Are you sure it's the right time? Said way too many people. I, smiling, kept saying, yeah, I'm sure. Until Ivy pulled me aside behind the catering van. You really had to do that here. During his moment, she hissed, her mascara already whispering down her cheek. I wanted to shout. Instead, I said calmly, it wasn't his moment. It was supposed to be our moment. But you all made it about staying small, so I chose not to. She stared at me like I'd grown horns. You think you're better than us? No, I said. But I think I'm finally choosing me. And maybe that feels threatening because you never have. She slapped me, just a little one. Not hard, not cinematic, but real. I didn't react. Just walked back toward Dana, toward Grandma, toward the house, toward the next version of me. I barely made it to the porch before the floodgates opened. Mom intercepted me like she'd been waiting in the shadows with a script. What were you thinking? She snapped, voice low but razor sharp. Hijacking your father's retirement for this? I turned. For what? Sharing the biggest news of my life? The job I've been chasing for years? You weren't exactly passing the mic at Sunday dinner. That's not fair, she said, instantly defensive. We've always supported you, you've tolerated me, I corrected. You've tolerated my little history obsession, my internships, my broke years at grad school. But the second it meant I might leave, suddenly I'm the villain. Her eyes flicked toward the guest still milling near the buffet. You're making a scene. No, I said, my voice steady now. I made a choice. If that feels like a scene to you, maybe ask yourself why. Dana appeared like an anchor beside me, hand sliding into mine without a word. My mom's face twitched at that too. Dana was another one of those things she accepted, but never really welcomed. Like almond milk. Or climate change. Behind her, my dad had retreated to a circle of old coworkers, nodding stiffly as someone told a story about the time he'd caught two seniors vaping in the AV closet. He wasn't laughing, I knew that face. It was his, I'm fine, but I'm not mask. I'd worn the same one at least once a week growing up. Grandma sidled up next to us with two mini quiches and a napkin. You know, she said, munching on one. I once turned down a marriage proposal to go to a typing school in San Diego. Dana blinked. Wait. What? Oh yeah, she said, waving a finger like she was conducting her own private orchestra. Nice man. Big shoulders. Tiny thoughts. My daddy said I was ruining my future. I said, sir, that man isn't my future. She grinned, crumbs dotting her lipstick. What happened to him? I asked. Died in a silo accident 2 years later, she said with a shrug. Learned to type 75 words a minute. Got a job in a lawyer's office. Met your grandpa there. The good one. Dana gave her a fist bump. I think I fell a little more in love with both of them. That night, after the last of the folding chairs had been stacked and the band packed up, my dad finally found me in the driveway. You didn't have to do it like that, he said. No anger, no fire. Just tired. I didn't want to do it like that, I admitted. But you wouldn't let me do it any other way. He looked away, hands in his pockets. The same stance he'd take whenever he'd lecture someone and wasn't ready to admit he was wrong. You're really leaving, he said. I am. There was a long pause. Then, just make sure you take a good coat. That was it. His blessing, wrapped in wire. I nodded. I will. The morning after the party, I woke up to a group text from my mom titled, Moving Forward as a Family. The message was 4 paragraphs long. It included the words, disappointed, timing, your father's feelings, and my personal favorite Caleb. This didn't have to be public. Public? Ma, you served cold cuts in a tent. I didn't declare war on national television. I ignored it. Instead, I texted grandma.me, you okay after yesterday? Grandma, oh, honey, I slept like a brick. I haven't had that much fun in years. Also, your cousin Reese stole 2 bottles of wine. Left in my purse.me. Are you keeping them? Grandma, duh. Dana and I spent the day packing. Well, Dana packed. I mostly opened boxes, stared at objects, and got nostalgic. I held up a snow globe from Gettysburg that still had a sticker on it. Remember this? I said. Dana raised an eyebrow. You bought it 2 years ago. It has glitter and Lincoln in it. Exactly. Peak Americana. We worked through closets and cabinets, pausing only when Dana found a crumpled envelope I'd buried under old field notes. Is this what I think it is? I froze. It was the original job offer letter, printed, creased, and signed in blue ink. I didn't remember printing it. I must have done it late one night, maybe trying to make it feel real. Dana handed it to me. You never told me you signed it already. I signed it the day it came, I admitted. But I didn't want to jinx anything until I knew I could actually leave. Dana sat on the edge of the bed. You mean until you could actually say you were leaving? I nodded. They didn't say, told you so. They just leaned over, kissed my shoulder, and went back to packing socks like nothing happened. Like we hadn't just cut an emotional umbilical cord wrapped in 28 years of Midwestern family guilt. At 5:14 p.m., Ivy texted. Ivy, you humiliated him. I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied, me, he'll survive, 3 dots. Then nothing. At 7:30, my dad called. I stared at the screen again. Dana looked at me and said gently, you don't have to answer, but I did. Hey, I said. He cleared his throat. I just wanted to say, I heard about the job title. Assistant archivist, huh? Yeah, big deal. Pause. You always were good with dates and facts, he added. Remember when you memorize all the US vice presidents in order? I blinked. I was 11, I know, he said. Weird kid. I smiled, just a little. Yeah, I was. Then he said it. Quiet, barely audible. I'm proud of you, Caleb. Just like that. And no thunder, no parade, just a sentence. Finally, I didn't cry. Not then, but I also didn't hang up right away. We stayed on the phone for 5 more minutes. That's how we work, my dad and I. Short sentences, long silences. He told me to send him my new address once I got settled. I told him I'd forward the moving truck details in case he wanted to stop by before we left. Neither of us said, I forgive you. But maybe that's what send me the address meant. 2 days later, the farewell tour began. My last shift at the Historical Society was weirdly emotional. Mrs. Lefkowitz from Archives baked a bundt cake and made me promise not to become one of those coastal people who forget the Midwest has stories too. The librarian gave me a mug that said, history nerds make better lovers. I'm choosing to ignore the subtext. Even my high school AP US history teacher, Mr. Whitaker, who once deducted points because I said Alexander Hamilton was kind of a messy bitch in an essay, stopped by and said, guess I was wrong about you, which might be the closest thing to an apology that man has ever uttered. Ivy, still silent, she stopped answering my texts. Dana said to let it go, that people process things at their own speed. But it stung. Growing up, we were the close ones. Not the braid each other's hair, close, more like yell at the TV together during Jeopardy, close. But still, then Friday came. I was in the middle of shoving the last box of Dana's books into the back seat when a car pulled up. Ivy, she didn't get out, just rolled down the window. You're really going, she said. Yep. A long pause. You're not mad I slapped you? I shrugged. It wasn't a good slap. That earned the tiniest smile. Then she opened her car door and stepped out. In her hand was a bag from the bookstore downtown, the one where we used to kill hours browsing as kids. She handed it to me without a word. Inside was a leather-bound notebook with gold lettering that said, things worth remembering. I looked up at her. For your museum thoughts or whatever, she mumbled. You were always better at remembering than letting go. I didn't hug her. We're not a hugging family, but I did say, thanks, Ivy, and she said, just don't forget us entirely. DC, boy. Then she got in her car and drove off. Dana walked out with our coffees just as I closed the door. Who was that? Ivy, I said, still staring at the notebook. And I looked at them, a small smile tugging at my mouth. I think she forgave me. Dana raised their cup. Progress, and we clinked. The last night in town was quiet. No dramatic send-off. No tearful airport goodbyes. Just me, Dana, the cat whose name is Roosevelt, of course, and a few last boxes stacked by the door. We slept on an air mattress in an empty room, echoing with the ghosts of mismatched furniture and old arguments. At one point, I woke up to the soft hum of Dana whispering to Roosevelt in the dark, "You're gonna love DC, little guy. You've never peed in a Capitol-adjacent litter box before." I almost laughed. But then, I stared at the ceiling and felt it all hit me. The weight. The leaving. The finality. The fact that this time, I wasn't just moving out. I was moving on. At 6:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. Grandma. Breakfast. 20 minutes. Don't make me drive over there. So we went. She made French toast. Real French toast. The kind soaked in egg overnight and fried in a pound of butter. She handed me a plate like it was a communion wafer. She said. You're gonna need carbs. DC has too many stairs and too few parking spots. Dana cleared their throat gently. Thank you, Grandma. Don't thank me yet, she said, eyeballing Dana's hair. I still think you'd look better as a redhead. Halfway through the meal, she pulled a small envelope out of her robe pocket and slid it across the table to me. Inside was a check. Grandma, don't argue. It's not much, but it's enough for a mattress that doesn't sound like a dying balloon every time you move. I looked at her. You don't have to. I want to, she interrupted. You're doing something big, scary, brave. That deserves a mattress and maybe even a frame. Dana looked between us, misty-eyed. You know, Grandma added, reaching for the jam. When I left for San Diego, my mother didn't speak to me for 2 years. Said I was embarrassing the family, but she got over it. Did she? I asked. No, but then she died and I got her fancy brooch collection. So who's laughing now? We left her house with full bellies and fuller hearts. As we were getting into the car, she waved from the porch and shouted, and if your parents ever give you trouble again, just remember I've got dirt on your father. Enough for a whole PBS documentary. I saluted her. She saluted back with a spatula. We hit the road just after 9. Dana queued up a playlist titled, Manifesting a Future Where No One Guilt Trips Me. First song, Go Your Own Way. Of course, it was. As the miles stretched behind us, and the GPS counted down the hours to Washington, D.C. I looked in the rearview mirror. Our town was shrinking behind us, and somehow, for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel guilty about leaving it. We crossed into Virginia just as the sun started to dip behind the hills, splashing everything gold. Dana was asleep in the passenger seat, Roosevelt snoring softly in his carrier like a fuzzy engine. And me? I was gripping the wheel like it owed me money, trying not to think about what came next, because the closer we got to DC, the more real it became. I was moving into a one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore. Yes, a bookstore. The leasing agent told me it was, historically, cozy, which I've since learned is realtor code for, you can touch the sink and the bed from the same spot. Dana would be staying with me for the first month, before heading back to our hometown to wrap up a few things, including their job, before making the move official. But for now, it was me. Me and a job with a badge and a desk and actual artifacts that belonged in museum cases, not the bottom of my sock drawer. By the time we pulled into the city, it was nearly midnight. The streets glowed amber, the buildings sharp and strange in that new city way that makes everything feel like a movie set. I parked badly, hauled Roosevelt up the narrow stairs, and opened the door to our new place. It was tiny. It was slightly crooked. It smelled faintly like cinnamon and radiator heat. I loved it instantly. We dropped our bags, stood in the middle of the living room, which also happened to be the kitchen and 40% of the bedroom, and just breathed. This is it, I said. Dana turned slowly, grinning. Caleb Whitman, D.C., resident, assistant archivist. Occasional big deal. I laughed. You forgot. Roommate to a cat with anxiety and poor bladder control. Roosevelt meowed in protest. We unpacked just enough to locate toothbrushes and collapse on the floor mattress Grandma's check paid for. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like it was chasing something invisible, my brain finally started to quiet. I thought of my parents. I hadn't heard from them since the day of the party. Ivy had texted once, "Good luck, nerd." That was it. It hurt. But it didn't stop me, because for the first time, I wasn't chasing their approval. I was building something of my own. The next morning, I woke up early, but I couldn't help it. First day energy. I slipped on a shirt Dana had ironed the night before, kissed them on the forehead, and walked 3 blocks to the metro station. As I waited for the train, heart thudding in my chest like a drumline, a woman nearby looked over and smiled. First day? She asked. clearly clocking my nervous energy. Yeah, I said. You can tell? She nodded. Same look my son had when he started at the Smithsonian. I blinked. That's exactly where I'm going, she laughed. Good luck. Don't let the ghosts in the archives boss you around. I make no promises, I said. The train arrived. I stepped inside, doors closed, and just like that, a new chapter began. Orientation at the museum was a blur of security briefings, badge photos, and a tour that felt like walking through the pages of every history book I ever loved. The archive smelled like old paper, dust, and purpose. I wanted to bottle it and wear it as cologne. My supervisor, a woman named Judith with white hair and combat boots, handed me a stack of access forms and said, "You touch anything in these rooms, you log it. You sneeze near a presidential letter, you log it. You so much as look at the Lincoln stovepipe hat without clearance, I break your hands." I nodded like I'd been drafted into a secret society. Honestly, I didn't care. I was here, back home. Well, my former home. Things stayed quiet. My parents didn't call. Ivy texted once more. Ivy, mom's pretending you're just taking a break. Me, that's fine. Let her. Ivy, she'll come around. Me, will she? Ivy, no idea. But I saved you a slice of dad's retirement cake. It's still in the freezer. You want it? Me, only if you write "Congrats Trader" on it in icing. Ivy, done. 3 weeks in, Dana flew back to tie up loose ends. We hugged for a long time at the train station. I didn't want them to go, even for a bit. I knew they'd be back. But I also knew something else. For the first time in my life, I felt solid on my own, and then out of nowhere it happened. A letter, mailed, with the real stamp, from my dad. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Caleb, I didn't handle things well. I'm still learning what it means to let go. This job is big. You are big. I'm proud of you. I mean that. Mom's still processing, but she reads every article about DC museums now and sends them to Grandma like it's spy work. P.S. Grandma says you owe her wine. She's right. Love. Dottie read it twice. Then again, and then I cried. Not the loud, messy kind. Just a quiet release. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. That weekend, Dana returned with the carry-on bag, a bottle of Grandma's stolen wine, and a grin that said, "We're really doing this." We toasted on our fire escape with plastic cups and takeout noodles. Here's to not shrinking. Dana said. To finally expand, I replied. As I looked out at the city lights, the Smithsonian looming just blocks away, I realized something. This wasn't just about a job. It wasn't about proving a point to my parents. It wasn't even about leaving. It was about choosing myself, my path, my peace. I had finally left the porch, and I wasn't looking back.